hello, everybody, and thanks for taking the time out of your very busy schedule to join us today as we discuss ways to prepare for a market without short-term medical plans. If your sales have been like most agents that have experienced what we have experienced over the past year, then roughly a third of all of your sales are probably short-term medical plans. And yes, it is conceivable that by mid-year this year, the new administration will ratchet back short-term medical plans to a maximum of 3 months in duration. We are closely monitoring this, and we will keep you apprised of any developments that we learn. But before that happens, we all need to be prepared with the right carriers and the best plans for our clients, as well as any other insurance options that we think will help you fill the void in the short-term medical market. And hopefully you will not miss a beat when and if this happens. First up in our series is Cigna, who's been rapidly increasing their market footprint in the ACA space with really great competitive features. And with us today from Cigna is Nick Cioppa. He'll be sharing some valuable tips on ways to capitalize on this inevitable shift. Nick, I'm going to turn it over to you now, and I'll stop sharing my screen so you can take over.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. This is the 30,000 foot view, and I'm going to talk quite a bit here on the ACA from our perspective. And this is really kind of looking at the past, I would say 2 to 3 years, and mostly this year. So one of the first things that we're starting to see is there's a lot more competition in the market. So dating back to 2016, when the ACA was really being rolled out, a lot of carriers actually exited the market, legacy carriers like United, Humana, Aetna, et cetera. And because they were really hemorrhaging money, they cut commissions. Cigna actually cut commissions to the brokers as well. So we were able to stay solvent in the business in market. So that was something we actually did. Now what we're seeing now is a lot of carriers are not only coming back into the market, but you're seeing new upstarts. So whether you guys are familiar with them or not, but there's a few new upstarts in the business. Cigna has reintroduced commissions about 2 years ago, and they're continuing to get more aggressive. And then we're even seeing some other carriers like United, which is obviously a major player, get right back into the market this year. So I think for 2021, the story is really more competition, whether that's through expansion efforts or just new entrants getting back in. And for ourselves in particular, we didn't have any expansion into new states, but we had tremendous expansion in a lot of our current states, and we're going to see more and more expansion into new states for Cigna going forward. The next kind of narrative for 2021 is commissions and bonus. Commissions in the ACA have steadily gotten, or I should say, are creeping up steadily over the past couple of years now. And just to give you kind of like a blanket idea of what that looks like for Cigna in particular, depending on the state, it ranges anywhere from $18 to $25 per member per month. And other carriers, I would say, are very similar in that. The Blues of the world pay a little differently, sometimes on a percent of premium basis. And then we've also saw bonuses. So bonuses were something, a couple of years ago, people would roll out a bonus here or roll out a bonus there. And, a lot of the legacy carriers like a Cigna or like an Anthem really stayed away from bonuses. And we didn't really get involved. But bonuses have pretty much just been starting to run rampant within the ACA business. With that, a lot of other, different earning potential for agencies who, are high volume writers. They have a little, different setup in terms of incentives to write more business. But I think the point of that second bullet there is saying is that commissions have not only been reintroduced to the ACA marketplace, but it looks like because things have now become stable and carriers have figured out a way to monetize this book of business, commissions have gotten way more aggressive and competitive, depending on the market, and bonuses have really exploded this past year. So I think the story of going back 3, 4, 5 years ago when there was not really a lot of money to be made in the ACA has definitely changed. That storyline has definitely changed. The next thing we've noticed, especially this year, and I think there's a lot of different reasons why, is very high retention across the board. And this is not just Cigna related. This is really all carriers for the most part. The business has been very transient over the past few years. And what we've noticed is customers come on and really don't stay. It hasn't been very sticky. So think of maybe if any of you guys out there sell Medicare, very sticky business, customers really just renew year over year. Well, up until this year, the business has moved quite a bit. And because it's a very cost conscious business. But what we've noticed is because things have gotten more competitive and things have stabilized, that comes along with price and premium. So a lot of folks really aren't willing to switch for a $2 to $3, $4, $5, even $10 swing in their monthly premium. Whereas years ago, it could have been $50, $60, $70. And so that has kept retention on for this past year for all carriers in the market, which I think has also made it easier on a lot of the brokers out there who've had, big books of business with their carrier partners. And I would also say due to the political landscape over the past year with the election and then COVID, folks felt comfortable. They didn't want to really make moves in open enrollment of 2021. And then the next one we saw was real call center growth. So if anybody out there is working in a call center environment, maybe some folks on the phone run their own call centers, whether on a small or a large scale, we saw really big growth in this sector as well because, due to the COVID environment, folks really weren't feeling comfortable engaging with their brokers on a face-to-face basis. And this is definitely a market by market. Depending on where people are at, they feel more comfortable going to see folks in person and they prefer that. But we definitely saw big growth in this space as well. And very much so in the Medicare population too, a little bit more vulnerable population. They were really not willing to go out and have those conversations. And we've seen some local brokers get pretty creative with how they've gone about engaging their customers. So if I said there was 4 kind of key things or key themes that we saw this past year within the ACA, I would say these are the ones that stick out to me. And with that said, I'd love to just get kind of your guys' feedback, or if you have questions you want to ask me, to open it up and make it a little more conversational. Nothing? All right, I'm going to go back to this real quick and maybe I'll ask a question. And please chime in because it doesn't go too great when it's radio silence. But do you guys have an ACA carrier in mind that you would work with? Maybe you say, hey, I prefer these carriers over other ones. And then I would follow it up with, where does Cigna kind of fall into that fold? And what would we need to do to be a preferred carrier?
Well, in New Jersey, it's really the Blues and AmeriHealth that dominate in Oscar.
Yep.
So, right now, AmeriHealth is, I guess, depending on the age, is the cheapest for a silver plan.
Yeah, I remember AmeriHealth is big in South Jersey, right?
Right. But they have a network, through the whole state. But they're based in South Jersey. Yep.
Nick, that prompts a question, which is in markets where there's a fair amount of competition to choose from, and a broker really only wants to get aligned with the top 1 or 2, how do they go about determining what is competitive? Trying to take commissions out of the equation. What should they be looking at to determine where they should be parking their contracts with? Whether it's, we've got markets where we've got the big name brands like a Cigna, and we've got a lot of others that may be focused on more of the sort of the Medicaid market. What's your suggestion for helping them to pick the right partners?
Cost and then
That's a good question, Steve. Benefits, you said?
I said cost first and then benefits.
Yep. Good question. So I would say one of the issues that the ACA business has is you really don't get a lot of runway leading up to open enrollment to make decisions on who you want to partner with from a carrier standpoint if you're looking at things like costs and benefits. And because there's this kind of You know, it's kind of like a catch-22 from a carrier standpoint, where we hold all our information. We don't really show our cards until open enrollment starts, almost, or maybe a week to 2 weeks before open enrollment, because we're fearful, and this has happened in the past, of carriers changing what they do in market to be more competitive after they've seen what other carriers are doing. So it doesn't give you a lot of lead time. What I would say is, if you're in established markets that have the same carriers every year, you can get a very good idea what that carrier is going to do the following year, because they're already in the market. They're not going to have a lot of changes typically. Sometimes price will change year over year depending on how, you know, the book runs. But for the most part, you can get a very good barometer on what a carrier will do if they were in your market last year. Plans typically won't change drastically. You know, there will be some minor changes to the PCPs, the specialists, but most of the time it will really be deductible and maximum out-of-pocket changes that you'll see. And I would say, you know, from what I know, and I've worked for another carrier in the past too, outside of Cigna, is it's not very difficult to get contracted with carriers currently. You know, it's a lot of times it's just a typical appointment process, and I'm actually going to show you ours, which is, you know, really just collecting a few pieces of information and onboarding you guys. So it do to get contracted with a carrier, but if there are ones that you just want to work with, you know, it's pretty simple to go through, and I would say maybe go to healthcare.gov, or if you guys use Quote It, you can go on there and kind of search the carriers in your market that you're selling in the most of, to get an idea of what their plans, pricing, and benefits look like in that area. And, you know, one of the things that I think Steve and I have spoken about leading up to this call was, you know, Cigna, I think, is in a unique position for a lot of your clients. You know, if you guys, in two specific instances, if you guys have a lot of clients on the national general short-term product or on the pivot product, Cigna, they utilize Cigna Network currently. So if anything does happen in the space over the next year or so, I think Cigna is, you know, in a unique position to take on those members on those two plans, because it would have the least disruption. There still will be, no doubt, disruption for your clients, but I think from a conversation standpoint, it'll be a little bit easier, because they'll have, you know, at least some familiarity within the network that they have currently in place. That's one of the reasons we you know, wanted to hop on this as well. What are some of the other questions you guys might have? I'm going to show you our current footprint at Cigna. So every carrier has a, you know, a little different footprint, but this is currently where we are today. And if it has a star next to it, that means we had expansion within that state this year. Notable ones being Illinois and North Carolina, and definitely Florida. Excuse me. So for folks that don't know, probably very similar to the STM space, the biggest markets in the country are going to be Florida, Texas, and California. So we're not currently in California or Texas, but we've had some pretty big expansion in Florida this past year, and we'll continue to do so. North Carolina is another really big market in the country, and we actually expanded into 55 new counties throughout the state of North Carolina. So I believe there's either 99 or 100 counties in North Carolina, and we're currently sitting in 62, I believe. So that's our biggest state in terms of actual footprint, but you're going to start to see us have much more expansion into new states in future years. And talking about kind of competitiveness and where does Cigna have a real right to win, I would call it. If you have customers, the places I would point out are parts of Florida, Kansas, Missouri, North Carolina, Tennessee, and Virginia. Tennessee and Virginia being definitely, our strongest markets in terms of membership. Missouri coming in behind that. We have very strong products in Missouri, especially in the St. Louis market, and then in pockets throughout Florida. Do you guys have any questions on, expansion and what that looks like, or again, other carriers? It doesn't have to be Cigna related. I'd love to just hear what you have to think about the ACA in general.
Are you doing anything in Maryland?
So not currently, but because we have such a good presence in Northern Virginia, we get a lot of feedback on moving into Maryland. And it's something that, we definitely talk about internally and see how things shake out next year.
You guys are a national carrier. How come, just a handful of states?
Yeah, no, good question. So I think what you'll notice in this space is the way carriers, even a national carrier like Cigna, the way that we decide which states we go into, it's kind of like it starts, the best way to describe it is a very big funnel at the beginning of the year. So right now we have a bunch of new states that we're looking at to go into. And as we go throughout the year, the funnel will get smaller and smaller and smaller. And for many reasons that are above my pay grade that the actuaries work on. But in short, they just kind of pick certain markets to go into. And I think actually another good point that I did not put on this slide is that what you've normally seen in the space is carriers move into just really major metropolitan areas. And if you look at really our listing, most of it is major metropolitan areas within states. And in North Carolina, we expanded into those 55 rural counties in the state where it was really just us and Blue Cross Blue Shield. Another competitor named Ambetter or Centene, they did the same thing. They had a lot of rural expansion throughout the country. And that was really one of the first times we've seen a lot of that because mostly it's just, again, been picking like metro areas in certain states. And we did really well. And I think it showed a real need in a lot of these states and markets that really have just one player, which is typically a Blue Cross Blue Shield. So I think that you'll see that change going into future years. But, again, to answer your question, they really just try to pick what states they want to go into. And throughout the year, numerous algorithms will kind of throw certain states out when we think about them being attractive.
Hey, Nick, there's a question here about the Ohio, Kentucky, Indiana area.
Mm-hmm.
Any plans for Cigna, or are there other carriers that you'd recommend in that tri-state area?
Ohio, Indiana, Kentucky. So I can't say that there's any plans for Cigna currently. Again, we look at a lot of the states and I don't like to commit to anything because things will filter out. In Ohio, I would say, let me think here. In the Cleveland area, I know there is Oscar. I know they have a good product with the Cleveland Clinic. They're actually, I believe, the only carrier currently, at least they used to be the only carrier that had a product with the Cleveland Clinic in the Cleveland area of Ohio. But other than that, no one's really sticking out to me. I want to say United may have went into Indiana this year because they have their UH1 headquarter there, but I'm not 100% sure.
What
All right, I'm going to move. Yep,
I was
go
just
ahead,
going to say,
Steve.
we've got a lot of questions coming in about different markets. At what
Yep.
point during the year do you think you'll have a little bit more concrete information about expansion states?
Yeah, so this goes back to kind of what we were touching on earlier. When we don't have a lot of runway, and this has been a lot of frustration from the broker community in general with carriers. So we're having a lot of discussions internally on how aggressive we want to be in getting our information out to the markets. But I would say typically in previous years, around mid to late September is when we really give thorough announcements and kind of, big marketing campaigns on, hey, we're coming to your state. And we do that with, webinars, and in the past we would do it in person when we actually come out to the state and go to the different markets, and kind of do broker rollouts or market rollouts in the state to go through things. But we're hoping we can, maybe get things out a little sooner this year. But in previous years, it's typically around the September timeframe. And that creates a lot of challenges for the carrier, right? Because we get that information out, and then we have, tons and tons of brokers that want to get contracted, and we're kind of scrambling to make sure you guys get contracted. So it can be a little disjointed experience, and that's why we're trying to figure out ways where we could possibly, get creative and get ahead of that for the future years. What are some of the other ones you have, Steve?
I was going to toss another one out there. All right, so for those folks that have a lot of short-term medical members on books that expire, let's say, towards the latter part of the year, and they're not permitted to renew them, will that be considered a qualifying life event? Will they be eligible for Cigna as an SCP?
That is a good question. So currently, I believe the answer to that is no, because it's not qualified coverage. And qualified coverage being, group coverage or previous fully insured coverage. So right now that answer would be no, but I would say to that, if legislation does come down to kind of, axe out short-term medical, I could totally see them putting out an SCP, which would make that a qualifying life event to gain coverage. So that's one that I would say we'd have to be on a very wait and see approach.
Makes sense. Thanks. Any other questions from anybody?
No. All right. I'm gonna just put. I just have one more slide here, and so if anybody thinks of something, please just write it in. So this is our contracting process, literally. It's just simple for us, at least. Every carrier is a little different in how they do it. And basically, what we do is, I think the easiest way for folks on the call, if this is something you'd like to do, you just send me an email, and within the email, these are the key things I need. I need your full name, your full email, your MPN, your resident state, where your license is, and then any other additional states you'd want to appoint. And then what I can do is I can send that to our team. They create an appointment packet that'll go out typically same day to your email, and you just have to fill it out. It's all digital. You fill it out digitally, submit it, and then it takes about, depending on the state, because every DOI is a little different in how they process things, about a week tops, I would say, especially this time of year, to get appointed with us and fully set up. So I'll go back to my contact information if anybody wants it. That's my email. It's basically just my name at Cigna.com, but there's a period in between it, between Nicholas and Cioppa. And then again, if you guys have questions that you think of, maybe you're not comfortable saying them here or whatever it is, you want to have a separate conversation, it's fine. Feel free to reach out to me. I'm, again, pretty available. Any other questions or anything, again, guys, about, your feelings on short term? You feel like, hey, I feel like short term safe. Or maybe you don't feel like it's safe. Yep.
Well, it sounds like it's not safe. And if the government has a special open enrollment period, I should probably tell my clients to get on it, depending on what their income level is.
Yeah, I think that's one way to look at it. And I guess stay tuned if you guys want to do some research. If you want to just go on Google or something, you can kind of look up Biden ACA or some keywords. But he's going to be making that announcement tomorrow, actually. Yeah, today's Wednesday, so he's going to be making it tomorrow. So we'll have a better idea. I would say you know, the way we're thinking about it, or if we're going to be like make an educated guess, I could see something coming out for 2-1.
And again,
You know, they have a lot more marketing money that was cut by the, yep.
yeah, you went out on us a little
Say again,
bit.
I'm sorry.
No, you just went out on us a little bit.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry about that. No, so I said, I could see things if we're going to make like an educated guess, or like, you know, just throw some stuff out there. I could see stuff coming as soon as 2-1. So February 1st, you know, him maybe reopening the exchanges. For how long, I have no idea. Or it could maybe come 3-1 because they want to get the word out before they actually go about doing anything. But you know, if you guys have the time tomorrow, you know, whether it's on TV or I know it'll definitely be in the news, because there's a lot more money that the administration is going to be putting forth, pushing the ACA that was, you know, previously cut and taken away. So there should be a lot more news out there about it. And then another thing too, I definitely should point this out, is we pay commissions on all our business. So not just business that gets written during the open enrollment period, you know, from November to December. We'll pay business on any business that comes in throughout the entire year. So special enrollment business, we pay the same for that as well. That's something that not all carriers have done in the past, but we've seen, I think most now doing so, and Cigna also has always done that.
And up to how many people on a contract?
It is 6.
So you'll pay up to 6 people.
Yep.
Okay. One question came up about contracting. If you're not already contracted with Cigna for under 65 IFP, it is a separate contract from Medicare. We do have the contracting available on the AHCPsales.com website. So you can grab it there, fill it out, and we'll submit that for you.
Yeah, so they make it, you know, easier for you if you'd like. But that's really all I have, guys. I just wanted, again, to keep kind of casual and, you know, relatively informative, and see where you guys are at with stuff. And if you have any questions, please just don't hesitate to reach out.
Okay. Thank
Okay,
you.
any final questions? All right, if not, I thank you for attending. Nick, thanks so much for taking the time to present this today. We appreciate all the information. It's been very valuable for us.